Hey everyone, Bryce, Richardson here, and we have two huge things coming to Conway, Arkansas. Not just Big Bad Breakfast, which is going to be behind me, but I'm going to sit down with the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Conway and talk about the sales tax increase. It's going to be heated. We have some great questions, so let's dive in. Here with Brad Lacy, the president of the Conway Chamber of Commerce, and we're here to talk about the Pick 6 sales tax increase. So Brad, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And what Pick 6 is.
Okay. Brad Lacy, president and CEO of the Conway Area Chamber. I've been in this role for about 26 years between the Chamber and the CDC, which is the sister organization. It's an economic development organization. So Pick 6 is an initiative that the public will be voting on here on November 18th. There are 6 different issues that you will vote on, and they are not tied to each other necessarily. You can pick and choose the ones you want, but we believe that they all work together. So the first would be a permanent $0.25 for police and fire capital. So that will do a couple things. It will give us, give the city a permanent source of funding for capital for things like fire trucks, police cars. Right now that money is coming out of general operating, so it's competing with things like salaries, with other positions, or just other needs that the city has. So this would give us a permanent fund for that capital. The other is a permanent 1/8 cent for street and drainage maintenance. That obviously is important because as we continue to grow, we'll need to continue to do overlays. If you don't have the appropriate money available for that, an overlay, if we go too far, then you move from an overlay to a complete rebuild of a street, which is a lot more expensive. So it's important to stay on top of that. The other 4 are projects that work together to bring visitors to this community in order to generate more sales tax collections, which ultimately fund operations for the city. So those 4 are an amphitheater, so a 12,000 seat amphitheater that would serve all of the Little Rock metro area. This would be very similar to the one in Rogers that a lot of people are familiar with. The second would be a convention center that would allow us to compete for conventions, which we currently can't do. That would have a 1,000-person ballroom, and then the requirement would be that a third party would come in and build a flagged hotel that would be attached to that. Then the Grand Theater, which is our original vaudeville theater that was built in 1909. So it would be a complete remodel of that facility, and then that would be multi-use. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a minute. And then finally is the first phase of a Lake Conway project. This would look at the northern shoreline of Lake Conway, which is in the city limits, and it would build about 2 miles of elevated boardwalk, which eventually will connect into our trail system.
So parking.
Okay.
Everyone is concerned with downtown parking.
Yes.
Specifically around new developments like the Grand Theater.
Mm-hmm.
How are we addressing that, and what's going on with parking downtown?
Okay. So I think initially what we need to look at is it's a little bit of a perception issue more than it is a problem, and I'll explain why. One, there's more parking than most people think. So we've actually counted the parking spots. I'm going to look at my notes here so I get it right. 857 on-street spaces within about 4 blocks of the Grand. There's another 300 spaces that are in public parking lots. So that brings you up to a little under 1,200 public parking spaces within 4 blocks of the Grand. There's another 757 that are in private lots. So that brings you to a little bit under 2,000 spots. The Grand is 320 seats. The other thing you need to think about is it will, if we're successful, it really creates a little bit of a nighttime economy that we don't have.
Yep.
And so a lot of these events will be at night when parking on Oak Street North
More open.
Very open.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of those surface lots there. And so, you know, we're not going to see a parking problem initially. I hope we see a parking problem as time moves on. And then we can get into looking at structured parking. I don't think that we need it now. I do think some of it's a perception problem, because people would not think twice about parking in, the farthest lot at UCA to go to a performance at Reynolds.
Right.
But there are spaces that are closer than that downtown, but you can't see the theater. You would have to turn a block or so. So I think some of it's just getting used to something different. I also think that the beauty of this is that you're going to come downtown earlier, you're going to go to dinner, then you're going to walk over, see a performance, see a concert, see a movie at the Grand, and go home.
Right.
And so it really becomes more than just seeing whatever you've come to see.
Right. Makes sense. So walk me through why the city and the chamber chose to do a special election instead of just waiting a couple months to put this in the general election.
Yeah. So it's not a special election.
Okay.
I'm very glad that you've asked this question. If we were to go back several years in Arkansas, cities had a lot of latitude on when they could do elections. The legislature changed that. So a couple of sessions back, they changed that to say there are, I believe, 4 times in a year that you can do an election.
Okay.
In 2025, they amended that again. And so Act 405 of the 2025 legislative session gives cities exactly 2 options for elections in a year's time. This is one of those 2 options. So it is not a special election. It is an election date that is established by the state of Arkansas that cities can do an election. So we are not the only city doing an election on November 18th. I think, trying to think, Sherwood's doing an election. I think Bella Vista's doing an election. So there are 2 choices that you have. And they're different for even numbered years and odd numbered years. And so this is not a special election. This is an election date that was established by the state of Arkansas, and that's when we're doing the election.
Okay, I did not know that. So everyone keeps talking about adding to the debt load of the city.
Okay.
So obviously there's a lot of big developments with large debt loads that would be doing that, and supposedly 2025 tax revenues are down. So in adding this, would that actually help us in increasing the debt load just by increasing the sales tax?
Okay, so I think there's several parts of an answer here. So one, the city has the ability to issue up to $300 million in debt and be in good shape. They currently have about $60 million.
Okay.
So there is a lot.
So it's not $97 million.
No. It's
Okay.
$60 million. There's a lot of capacity there. And that $60 million works its way down every year. So if all of these pass, you're adding $100 million to that. So you're about halfway to the point of what you could actually issue in a financially responsible way for a city our size with the revenue streams that we have.
Okay.
I also think that it's important to note that these projects are growth projects. Like, these are projects that will bring more people, that will bring more spending. The thing that we haven't talked about that really isn't figured into our numbers, but you actually had a post on LinkedIn that said this very well. There is a private sector piece to this that will follow public investment. That is not figured into our math. That is not figured into our numbers. But we know it's out there. Like, we know that there are people waiting to see what happens on November 18th in Conway.
Right.
They have called. They've said, we're watching. If this passes, we'll be in touch. So we know that there are private investments that will follow.
Okay. Into those projects or into separate projects?
Just into projects around the community.
Okay.
I mean, if you build these type of venues, you will get more restaurants. You will get more retail. You will probably get other hotels. I mean, there will be other things that follow these type of investments. So it is very growth oriented. And I think that that's the important part of this. But the city is not in a terrible financial position. Like, they are extremely prudent with the money that they borrowed. There is a lot of capacity there. And again, if all of these pass, you're not even close to hitting the ceiling of what they could borrow.
Right. So I also, just while we're on the topic of debt, I did hear that outside of private investments, there are some kind of public partnerships, like the Arkansas Game and Finch, for instance. I don't know if we can talk about that, but I did hear that there may be some public partnerships on certain projects that would help offload some financial responsibility.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the private investments that we've already sort of mentioned is that, like, the convention center doesn't happen unless you have a private developer who's willing to put their own money in and build this hotel that's attached to it, and also run the convention center.
Right.
And so, their skin in the game is probably $40 to $50 million,
right,
of building this class of hotel that we don't have, and then running the convention center. So the other part of this is that these projects are really neutral to operating budget at the city.
Right.
And I don't think we necessarily want city employees running a convention center. We
Right.
want someone who knows how to run a convention center, because there's the sales aspect of it, there's the food prep aspect of it. I mean, there's just a lot of moving parts. And we have national folks that are interested in bidding on that if
Right.
this happens.
Right. So obviously we have to operate it, meaning the city has to operate in some capacity. So there will likely be city involvement in the creation or sustaining of these projects. Is there anyone in particular in the city that would be doing that, or would it be delegated to a third party? What kind of collaboration does that entail?
Yeah, so I think that the important part of these projects are that they will have a third party that is working with the city to operate them. The city's core competency is not booking a concert with Chris Stapleton.
Right.
So
would love that, but
so
yeah.
that's not what they do. And in this method that we're using, if we're successful, is not unlike things that other communities do. I mean, it is routine for cities to build convention centers and then do a long-term lease with an operator who's going to build the hotel. If this is successful, we build an amphitheater, we do an RFP, we find the best person possible to come in and run it, and then they are the group responsible for booking talent, for operating the facility, and then the benefit to the city is the revenue that's coming off of it. I think there's also some misconceptions that, the private sector builds these things. Like, just because a company's name is on an arena doesn't mean that they built it.
Right.
It means that they paid some amount of money for naming rights.
Right.
But most often, it's a public investment. And you go to the NFL. I mean, Jerry Jones didn't build AT&T Stadium.
Right.
The city of Arlington built it. Was there skin in the game? Yes. Might there be some skin in the game in this AMP? Maybe. There may be a naming opportunity there, but
Right.
that's not where we are. I mean,
Yeah.
we're at the point of we need to build it.
Right.
And so I think that is the beauty of this, is that they're publicly owned, they're publicly financed, but you have experts who are going to run it. And I would hope that would give people comfort. And what I would tell you is, I've said this about the convention center, I'll say it about the AMP too. There are national operators that are interested in doing this because they're pretty bullish on this market.
Right. So going into a couple of these projects, they are location specific.
Yes.
So it sounds like, at least from what's been communicated to the public, whether that's from you guys or from people posting things, that there hasn't been location selected. So for those people who are looking at these projects and saying, okay, where's the chamber or the city at in these deals, how can they be confident in these situations if there's not even been a location selected?
So we have talked about a location for the AMP.
Okay.
And so it is likely that will be at the old airport. The CDC owns that property. We are going to donate that. Like, there is a rumor that we're going to make all of this money
Yep.
off of these projects. We're making no money.
Yep.
I mean, we will, I guess you could say, lose some money because we're
Yep.
giving property up. And the reason it's there is we've worked for years with that in mind. There are some benefits really from a sound standpoint. If you look at the way it might be laid out, the sound is going to be pushing into the industrial park.
Okay.
There's also a really important parking component there. You may have been to some concerts where parking isn't convenient.
Yep.
And so there is additional acreage that we will hold for parking so that you'll have several acres of dedicated parking for people. It also, that total cost includes some infrastructure work there for water and sewer that not only benefits that site, but also the industrial park and then the system as a whole for the city. And then with some connectivity on roads, one of the operators that's interested in this, I think they really like the location because if you think about it, that airport is right in the middle of the city between two interstate exits,
Yep.
right? So if you think about 12,000 people trying to leave at one time, they're going to be going south to Dave Ward, they're going to be going north so they can hit the interstate 2 areas. You've got east-west corridors there with Robbins and Bruce and 6th Street and Dave Ward Drive. And so with a little bit of work of connecting up some of that interior street grid, we have a really great location for the AMP. With the convention center, there are multiple people interested in building a hotel and operating the convention center with multiple sites. And so instead of picking the site now, the idea would be that if it passes, then you go through an RFP process and let people bring the best deal forward. And you get the best deal. I mean,
Right.
especially when people are competing for it.
Right.
And so that should give people confidence that there's this RFP process with multiple folks looking at it, and that will be someone else's decision. It won't
Right.
be mine.
But nationally, everyone keeps talking about how people are strapped for cash. So why is now the best time to do a sales tax increase when everyone's talking about not affording groceries?
Yeah. So I understand that. I would say that in my 26 years, I've never heard anyone say there was a right time to do one.
Right.
But I think we have to stay focused on, do we want to grow?
Right.
Because you're not going to stay the same. Cities are either growing or they're dying. And the cities who think they're not dying and that they're staying the same, they're slowly dying. And so the history of this city has always been to put your foot on the gas and grow. And as hard as times may be, they're not as hard as they were in 1929,
Yep.
when there was not a functioning bank in the city. We were going to lose the 2 private colleges. And the business leaders of this community came up with the idea of forming Conway Corporation to manage the utilities of the city, raise money, and pledge future revenue from the electric utility to save the colleges. And they did it. And so time and time and time again, this city has stepped up to make the decision to grow. And, we are the chamber. We represent 1,400 businesses. We are pro-growth. We've always been pro-growth. We will always be pro-growth because that is what our business community expects from us. And that's important to the community because those businesses employ the majority of the people who live here.
Right.
And so that's why we're involved in this. That is why we think now is the time, because we also see what it costs to operate our city.
Right.
And it costs money. And you've seen some of our statistics as we dug into this and we saw, what other cities in Arkansas are generating in sales tax collections because their rates are higher. Other cities in Arkansas have higher property taxes, so they get money that way. There are multiple ways that cities get revenue to operate on. I think that our community has done a great job with limited resources, and people will want to argue with that, but if you look at the data doesn't lie.
Right.
North Little Rock has 10 mills of local property tax. Little Rock has 15. We have 4.2. All of that goes to police and fire pensions. All 4.2 mills. So there's no room there to use any of that for anything other than that. And we shouldn't use it for anything other than that. So then it goes back to the general fund that is being funded a lot by sales tax. And so if we want to continue to grow, if we want to pay city employees well, then we need to invest in things that do that.
So we've seen various things on Facebook and reaching out to people. Everything up until recently has been pro-Conway, pro-growth. Everything's growing, everything's amazing. And the public, at least from the ones I've communicated, feel that as up until the point where we started marketing, it almost sounds like we need the sales tax to survive. So is that the case, and what's going on there?
We don't need the sales tax to survive, but I would argue that we need the sales tax to continue to grow. Because what we won't do is decide for Target whether they are putting a store in Searcy, which they are. Will they put one in Russellville? Guess who they won't ask? Us. These retailers that are changing their footprint to grow their businesses are going out into these areas surrounding us that we have had the luxury for 20 years of serving, and that pie is going to start to get smaller. Like, there is no way that that doesn't happen. So we have to look at other ways to grow the pie, or we'll have some hard decisions to make. And so I don't think that that's a negative thing. I think it's being proactive, and I think it's facing the reality that's ahead of us. We could always just do nothing and wait and see what happens, but I really don't think that's who this community is.
Right. So let's say that all of them pass. When does this start affecting people's wallet? When does it go live?
I think that goes live in April. And you know what I want to say to keep in perspective is that for every $100 of taxable purchases that you would make, this is an extra 75 cents. So for 75 cents on $100, all of these things happen. I think that's a pretty good return on our investment.
Right. So I did hear in various conversations that the sales, some of these are limited sales tax. So if there is they get a bond for a project, the sales tax survives until a certain point. Is that the case?
Yeah, so 2 of these would be permanent. So the public safety capital and the street and drainage maintenance, those will be permanent.
Okay.
The 3/8 bonded would expire once those are paid off. So the way you would look at it is if any of the 4 pass, the 3/8 cent goes on the books. But let's say only one of them passes. So let's say it's the Grand, $11 million. That probably pays off in 2 years, 2 or 3 years, and then the tax expires, right?
Dissipates.
But let's say that all 4 of them pass, you're probably looking at 12 years to pay all of them off.
Would they not start until the project starts, or how would it start? You said April?
Starts in April,
Okay.
and then we bond that revenue out, pledging future collections to pay that off. And so you have a set period of time within which you have to start construction on these. And so obviously there's a lot of planning, and these are in various states of readiness, I would say. I would say the Grand and the Lake Conway piece probably go first because they're sort of more ready to go. There's been more work done. Those are defined locations.
Yep.
I mean, you're not going to build the Grand somewhere that it's not,
it's just right there.
It's just right there.
Yeah.
Same with Lake Conway. We know what we're talking about there.
Yep.
So, various stages of readiness, but, I would say for all of them, you're probably looking at all of them being done at most 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years.
Okay. Let's just say for whatever reason that we'll just use the convention center as an example, that it passes, but we're not able to get what we need as an RFP. We don't select a location. and let's say the project fizzles out, would that sales tax still stay in place? Would you force a way to make it happen?
Well,
What would
the
that look like?
3/8 would stay in place, but you're not borrowing anything to build the convention center, so it's going to pay off faster.
Okay. So let's talk about the last project, the Conway Community Center. How did that go? Did we stay on budget? Tell us about that project.
So that's a question you would need to ask the city. I don't know the particulars about that. There's certainly a lot of talk out there about, did it go over budget? Did this happen? Did that happen? You know, I think things take the amount of time that they take to get done.
Right.
And unfortunately, it opened late in the summer, so there wasn't a lot of time for people to really swim before it had to shut down again. So we didn't get that whole operating season, and
Right.
I understand the disappointment there. And, and I think there were, some hiccups that they're trying to solve. But here's what I would say that you probably learned from that experience, that you may have picked up a change in how these projects would be managed. So we believe in benchmarking.
Right.
We love to benchmark cities that have already done something well and learn from them and then bring it back. So a couple of years ago, we took a group of city leaders to Oklahoma City. If you know anything about the history of Oklahoma City, it wasn't a great place to live in the late 80s, and they would tell you that. And they started a series of projects. Well, in fact, I'll tell you this piece of the story. So they passed a sales tax to recruit companies there by giving them incentives. They had all of this money built up. They had a war chest, and it was United Airlines that was competing for a big maintenance center, and they were competing against Oklahoma City, Indianapolis, Louisville, maybe one other place. Oklahoma City put the best deal forward, and at the end of the day, United Airlines picked Indianapolis. And to add insult to injury, an executive from United Airlines was quoted in the Oklahoma City newspaper and said, at the end of the day, we couldn't imagine our employees living there. So pretty big blow, because they'd gone to voters and asked for this money for economic development, and then it turned out that that really wasn't what they should have been doing. So they go back to voters and say, we messed up. What we really need to do is take this money and build quality of place. And it narrowly passed in, I believe it was 1990 or 91. And so they took that money and they started building quality of place. So they created Bricktown. If you've been there, they created water features where there were none. Yeah. They built the arena that was the basis of getting the Thunder. It's called MAPS, Metropolitan Area Projects. They're on their probably fourth phase of MAPS 30 years later. The key component to MAPS was what they called their Citizen Advisory Committee. And the Citizen Advisory Committee the chair was appointed by the mayor, and then each council person appointed one person. And so these are just citizens who live in Oklahoma City that bring some amount of expertise to the process. And that Citizen Advisory Committee sits between the staff and the city council, who has the ultimate say-so over what happens with these projects. But they bring an extra layer of accountability. They bring technical expertise, whether that is construction, project management, finance, and they are regularly reporting to the city, both the city government, the council, and the public on how these projects are going and making recommendations to the council for their approval. And what we have learned from Oklahoma City is that has worked time and time again, and it is central to their ability to do what they've done. That there is increased transparency, there is increased trust from the public, and just the expertise that they bring is really critical. And so a couple of weeks ago, the mayor announced that he would be forming a Citizens Advisory Committee. If any one of these pass, there will be a Citizens Advisory Committee. He named Don Greenland as the chair, who is a retired construction person in town that's really well respected.
Right.
Those 8 people have not been appointed yet, because there's really no reason to until we know if we have something to build. But at least I think the public can be certain that there is a new layer of accountability and expertise that's never been there before. And I think that they should really take a lot of comfort in knowing that that's there if any one of these pass.
Yeah, I did not know that, and that is a phenomenal thing that I think the city is
For sure.
would benefit from. Absolutely. So to end on a positive and personal note, which of these 6 is your favorite? Are you most excited for that you would like to share with the public?
You know, that is a hard question because I think all 4 of them do a lot for the city. From a straight economic standpoint, it's the amphitheater. I mean, there's just no doubt there is no amphitheater for Central Arkansas. I think that's another thing that people misunderstand is like, we're not, if this happens, we're not building it for 70,000 people that live in Conway. We're building it for a metropolitan area of over 1 million people.
Right.
And so this becomes Central Arkansas's amphitheater. So from a economic impact, that's huge. I mean, it will change the way our community functions. Jamie likes to say we've never gone to a restaurant on a Tuesday night and had a 45-minute wait.
Right.
But that will happen.
Right.
And those are good problems to have. Right. So I think from an economic standpoint, I would look forward to that. I think from a community standpoint, it's the theater.
Right.
Because we have studied these things, and I think when people see that, they think, oh, it's live theater.
Right.
Well, it's not. That's one component of what happens. Often these historic theaters become what they were originally, which is like the living room of the community, the gathering place. And so what we've seen is that, you know, you have this opportunity for incredible live music, and a lot of the cost of that theater, which is something that people are saying, why does it cost so much? Well, several $1 million is lighting and sound, because if you don't build it right, if it's not plug and play for a musician, they're not going to come, or you're going to have to bring it in every time. And so, you know, what good is it if you just have to keep bringing all this stuff in?
Right.
So there's the live music component that is sort of missing here. There is the live theater component. We see incredible opportunities with classic movies. If you look at the Franklin Theater in Franklin, Tennessee, 2 of their most successful things that they do are a Halloween series and a Christmas series of movies. And so there are days that they'll run 3 different classic Christmas movies. They start selling tickets in July, and some of those movies sell out in August, because there is this desire for nostalgia where you're going to bring your kids or your grandkids downtown, you're going to eat lunch, you're going to go see a matinee, you're going to shop. The other thing about the theater that I think is really fun to think about, and it would be something that if we're successful, we would want to start studying a little better, is they often become fundraising magnets for your nonprofit community. It's a venue that we don't have that is ready to go. And so you see nonprofits do very well in the fundraising space because they have this venue that has never been available, because it's right sized. It's 300 people. It's not 1,200 people like Reynolds. I mean, if you put 300 people in Reynolds, it looks like no one's there. You know?
Exactly.
And so it just brings, it will bring a life to downtown that's missing. It will bring a nightlife. You see stores decide to stay open later. You see more restaurants decide to set up shop. And so I think the theater will change the way the community feels and functions in a way. But I would say this in closing. What these projects are is really about being competitive for talent. We are in a war for talent, whether people realize it or not. People your age and younger will make decisions on where to live before they will make decisions on where to work. And if we want to be competitive, like we always have, then we have to up our game. And I have heard some people say this, and I think it's so true, is that they want to take their grandchildren to school every day. What they don't want to do is drive to see them 4 times a year. And these are the type of projects that build the kind of city that keep those people here.
Right. Well, Brad, thank you for your time. Thank you for the
Absolutely.
opportunity to talk
Thank
to you.
you.
The last question that I would have is, if anyone has any additional questions that we did not address or answer today, where should they go to get the answer?
So you could go to the pick6forconway.com website, and there is a list of frequently asked questions there. And if that does not answer the question, I would say give us a call at the Chamber, 501-327-7788, and we will do our best to answer those questions for you.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.